So we are going to talk about poverty and the relationship with human capital and how these three aspects, education, hunger, and health, are related. We are not going to be able to cover everything today, but those are like the basic aspects in this presentation. So this week we are going to go deeper into the concept of development by studying poverty, inequality, and the expression human development that goes beyond the basic aspect of economic development that we have already discussed. So, first question is, or to remember from the last 2 weeks, and you just wrote an exam, what is development in your words from so far? Yep. Okay, yeah. Actually, this is very important. It's an increase in the living standards. And there are different dimensions of development. We have been discussing about economic development, that in a very short synthesis, really short, is just an increase in the per capita or average income. How it is distributed, what kind of, where it comes from, how is the income produced, what are the implications of this, of the activities that generate income. That's not considered so far. It's just an average. But then but when we go beyond that, which is also key, but I think like in a more broader concept, we can think about human development, like as the capacity or the capability of citizens and humans to take care of their own lives and achieve their life goals. So, of course, one of the first aspects is freedom, and there is a lot of discussion about what freedom is, and it has become kind of a political trope here in the United States, but in other regions, and freedom in some cases has been so devoided from meaning that can mean anything, and anyone will use it as it wants. But freedom is like, it's about autonomy and the capability to devise like a plan and execute it without having some interferences from someone that will not allow you to do it, from someone or from some conditions that hinders someone to achieve these goals. Also equity in terms of the way costs and benefits are distributed among the population in terms of race, gender, social origin, nationality, ethnicity. Of course, health. You might be rich, you might be access to a lot of things, but if you have health problems, you will not be able really to realize all the benefits of human development. Education, of course, not just because an educated population can be more productive in terms of labor, but also because it builds political culture, it builds, it goes beyond just satisfying some basic shelter and food needs, but also to cultivate the mind and the spirit, which is as important as the bodies. And of course, safety and security. Why would safety and security be important for human development? It's like, because when there is no a minimum amount of security, you cannot take decisions, or there is a lot of uncertainty about the future, so you spend a lot of resources like defending yourself from any eventuality. And for example, individuals, companies, they have issues investing, because if I don't know if I'm going to invest somewhere or start a project somewhere and then something happens, why would I like go there? So, or if people have to spend a lot of money protecting themselves from criminal gangs, from extortion, from all kinds of violence, of course, this reduces their standards of life. And of course, there is a question that is important. Are there incompatibilities or conflicts between these objectives here and the increase in the per capita income, or do they like kind of work together? What do you think? Think about policies. For example, if we restrict trade, imports from goods from other countries, because this is like kind of some limitation to freedom, because citizens are not allowed to buy what they want, and on the same time, a reduction in the economic activity will. When we think about equity, the objective or the mandate of companies is to maximize the return to shareholders. Should companies or shareholders worry about equity? How does a high inequality or low inequality affect their perspectives of income? How low or how is economic activity and population health related? In some cases, of course, there can be positive synergies when we think that a richer society has access to more medical providers, better equipment, better transportation, better infrastructure, but also regions where with very intense economic activity, they can have associated also a lot of pollution. So this affects negatively the population health. And this is the kind of trade-offs and discussions that someone needs to keep in mind and understand that there is no always an easy, straightforward answer, but there are a lot of nuances that one needs to keep in mind. So, development, how can we begin to understand human development? So, first question, more basic. Are people's basic needs met? And what would be basic needs? Like in a very material point of view. Exactly, like food, shelter, water, health. That is like their basic, most material, more straightforward aspects to see. Okay, if I need to eat, I need somewhere to live, I need clothing, and I need like some running water. Is that enough to consider a society developed just because their material needs are met? Is that enough? Why not? Right. It's like, it seems like something is missing there. And we were talking about in the last about freedom, about education, about safety. So those are values and aspects that are not just because we are also complex social beings. We are not like animals in a farm. So there's need to be something more there. So what are basic needs? And they are all, of course, related with the quality of life. How are people living? What are their living standards? And the most basic aspect is this graph that I already showed you last week, showing Malthus's theory, in which he feared that the resources available would at some moment not be able to catch up with the population growth, and then there will be a point of crisis, and then basic needs of a large share of the population will not be achieved. But this happened. This very simplistic model does explain everything. Maybe not. Maybe we need to go like deeper into the aspect. And so we are going to focus into the topic of poverty. And all of us thinks about poverty, how it is, like we make it from jokes to policies to political debates about the fight on poverty, the reduction of poverty, the states that are poorer than others. But of course, even there we need to have a definition. And as you said, there is like poverty beyond like the monetary terms is the state of being poor. That is, you lack the basic needs of food, health, education, and shelter. There is no recreation there, there is no freedom, there is no, you can be rich and not free. You can have your basic needs satisfied and still have needs, but in this case it's just your needs are satisfied. And of course there needs to be an objective or a measure as objective as possible to measure. And in this case there are three, but today I'm only going to talk about two. Absolute poverty in terms of disposable income is how much income have you every day to satisfy your needs, and has been calculated, or the last update was $190 per day for a household, not even a family. And when say $190 per day, that's even less than my SEPTA ticket cost to come here. How is it? And this is for the United States. The PPP here means that this value is calculated on purchase power parity. So we need to make a conversion to make the $190 equivalent, or what $190 would buy here in terms of the currency of any other country, to make it comparable. Because of course, if you're in Colombia and you make $2,000 per month, that's a great salary. Here is kind of mediocre for an instructor, for example. But in Colombia, with $2,000 per month, with the current exchange rate, that is absolutely awesome. And that's why we have, or in Mexico, there are all these newly arrived digital nomads from the United States who are working remotely. They make money here, but they spend there, and they're like me, living some of their best lives. So, but I drifted a little away. So, absolute poverty in terms of how much money you get after you do the conversion, and relative poverty, which is in relationship of the average of the society where the individual or family lives. For example, if the median household income in, I think, in Philadelphia, or in the
is 27K, a household is
49K. That's the median. So it's to say, like, anyone or any family making less than half of that is classified as poor, which is very different to what's the values here, because 50% of $49,000 is $24,000, which is way more than the 190. But when you factor in the cost of living and the median standards of living in Philadelphia, that makes you poor. You're under a lot of deprivation. And of course, poverty is not like some divine punishment, something that people deserve because they don't work hard enough, or because they don't believe in God, or because whatever. There's no natural force or no law that says these people need to be poor. But what is true is that a lot of people are trapped into some kind of vicious circle in which it's very hard to overcome poverty. And the first aspect is savings. What happens with savings of poor people? And like I know that in real terms, no one here is really like poor in statistical terms, but think about you as students. Do you have a lot of money left to save after you pay all your bills? Or it's like a paycheck to paycheck, whatever comes in goes out? So that's one thing that happens when your income is very limited. Like, most of your income goes away to pay your daily needs, health care, rental, the rent, your taxes, your food, whatever. So all your money goes directly to is spent, so you cannot save. Everything goes into urgent needs. And what happens if you cannot save? You cannot build equity. So you end up, and that happens a lot here, that you end up paying a lot of money in rental when you could use that money to pay for a mortgage. But because you have not been able to save enough money for a down payment, you're locked into a situation in which you cannot build equity. You're just stuck there because all your money goes in front of you and doesn't allow you to really to build some equity and some intergenerational wealth that you can leave to your children. And also that happens with poor people, impoverished people. They don't have a lot of equity to leave to their descendants. And of course, because there is no equity, there is not a lot of activity, economies remain small, and if the economy remains small, there is small income, and if there is small income, there is no savings. That's more about the individuals, the families, but in general terms, in the national, like in terms of think about a city, a state, a county, a country. What happens in poor countries, and why did I put this here? And it's very related with this. What happens when a country or a region has limited income or has little disposable income? Of course, they cannot invest. The same thing that happens here to families or individuals happens to societies. So if there is no investment, like the I part in the GDP equation, there is no building of physical capital. There are no roads. There are no electric grid, no paved road. A lot of things that are important to improve productivity. So there is no physical capital being built or formed. Because the education system is deficient, so or there are not the quality is low, or there are not enough places in the high quality institutions. There is a lot of conflict and distrust that erodes the human capital and the trust between people, who is very important to improve the efficiency of the contracts and lower costs. We will go to that later. And there's low productivity gains. So you cannot build physical capital, you cannot build human capital, there is no productivity gains. And we saw this chart last week in which the productivity of a lot of resources or a lot of sectors increased a lot in terms of how many units can you produce per unit of time, or per laborer, or per unit of input. So you will stay back and lose toward a relationship with others. And of course, this is individual, families, this is the region or the state, but there could be foreign investment. And this is something that we will also see in a later class, which are flows of investment funds that go from one country to the other expecting higher yields, higher returns. And it's very important, and has become a key driver of development, because investors bring capital from outside. If the country is not able to save enough, one alternative would be to attract foreign investment. So if you can create your capital here, you can attract it from somewhere, but in exchange of some returns. So normally, or in theory, foreign investment brings capital, brings technology, brings infrastructure that can like help overcome these situations. But what happens, for example, if a country is too dangerous, or if there is no security that contracts will honor, and you're an international company and you have some funds to invest, what happens if some country doesn't provide any minimum warranties that you will be able to recover your money? Exactly. Not invest, to go somewhere else, or to demand returns so high that they offset this increased risk. So in some cases, these weak economies are aiming to attract more investment funds. They start to increase like the yields that they promise. And for those of you who study finance, you know that yield and finance are directly correlated. So if the risk is higher, you demand a higher yield, which of course reduce like the amount of what you have to give back to your investors. Is something that you deflect from other needs. So and this is of course a cycle. This really explains very nicely. This is from Subutina's book. So with low income, people don't make a lot of money because whatever reason. If your income is low, you cannot save. If you cannot save, your investment is low and your productivity remains low. So your income remains low. And what we have seen for the last couple of weeks is that there is this direct relationship between the size of the economy and the living standards. So if the economy, the personal economy, the regional economy, or the national economy doesn't grow, your living conditions are very unlikely to improve. So, and how does it result in low consumption? So you cannot buy enough goods and services to satisfy your needs. You're like kind of locked in this situation. More in a more general way, beyond like the families or the individuals, we have like some similar cycle, but like think about a region, a city, or a country. If the country is politically unstable and there is threat of property rights violation, either because the state or the laws on the institutions of the country cannot guarantee you to protect your property, or are not willing to honor contracts, so investment will be retained. If you don't know how much you can trust your partner, you might choose another partner. You might go anywhere else. So there is no domestic or foreign investment. That means that there is no accumulation of capital, so there is no economic growth. So it results in poverty and social yes. So the political instability can be reduced like very fastly, and then there is a lot of funds that might be interested in accessing or into entering this specific region and reap the returns. Of course, there is always a risk involved, and this is not an easy decision, and there are a lot of specificities and context-dependent aspects. But in general, what it has been like, what the evidence suggests is that under unstable political systems, economic growth tends to be lower, and the incidence on conflict is higher. So we have here another chart that kind of makes me shames me, because this is very dark red, but this is the share of the population living on on less than 30 per day. But still, we see that in many regions of the world, more than 70% of the population lives on less than $30 per day, or did that in 2019 before COVID. We have been talking for the last couple of weeks about how much it has increased, how much more the largest share of the population and the largest amount of people in human history has been able to abandon poverty, to overcome poverty. This is from the 90 to 20, it's like from 2015, that was like the real data, and that's a projection. We are not going to discuss where they got it from. One can discuss that, but what it's seen is that East Asia and the South Asia are the ones that have contributed the most to the reduction of global poverty. Also, this is the largest population, those are the largest populations of the world. This very thin orange line is the high income countries that are not in Europe. The Europe and Central Asia is this yellowish that has been like very low. Latin America has always been lower than other regions, but we have not made any like meaningful process in years compared with this. But then there is this section where there is very worrying, because even if in total terms seeing the human population as a whole, this is a huge success, this is also a failure. And this is why averages and putting all the data together and extracting a mean or some synthesis number can be deceitful, because sometimes you need to go into more detail to see what is happening there. And that's why I insist so much with you using charts, because charts, there is even the way to say how to lie with charts, how to show stuff with charts, and this is very important to be able to see what is happening here. So anyway, even with this, when we don't show this, the success is undoubtful. This is the amount, the share of the global population living on less than $1 per day. That's called extreme poverty. Then there is this higher number, which has also been, this is less than 2 per day. That's twice of the red line. And what is important, think about this. In 1820, 94% of the world population lived on less than $2 per day, everywhere. Here in the United States, in Europe, and like people who have been able to get this data and to estimate it, it's a lot of work. There is a lot of reduction. There is this change here, because in this moment, the World Bank decided to change their line of poverty, and it was not $1 or $2 per day, but $1.90. And there is one of the articles in Our World in Data that explains why this $1.90 is used, even if you think this is $1.90 equivalent in the United States. And we can all agree here that no one in the United States would be able to have a remotely adequate life with that level of income, and that happens everywhere. But a lot in a